So Faraway Lucas, we're back once again.
I have no idea what you mean, and there was never any break, Karl.
Yeah, like what mortgage payments?
Really glad you're back, Schmidt.
What are you talking about? What contract dispute?
To a lot of people, Jon Bernthal's take on everybody's favourite Marvel disciplinarian, the Punisher, is the definitive take on the character. A side effect of Bernthal's sheer intensity while portraying the Punisher, though, is that a lot of the other performances on the show often went overlooked. Like the time one guy screamed so convincingly, everybody really thought that Bernthal was tearing his face off, including Bernthal. And I really hope I'm pronouncing Jon Bernthal's name correctly there, because I said it a lot.
I have always gone with Bernthal as well, so I'm going to say that we're correct and just hope to dear God that we are.
There were takes of that intro, though, where I call him Bernthal, and is that like a Berenstein Bears type thing?
I did wonder what you were doing. I was pretty sure it's Bernthal, but yeah.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Jon Bernthal, this is Bam Slam the dog, and these are my 10 essentials.
But Lucas, would you agree that Jon Bernthal's take on the disciplinarian is like the definitive portrayal of the character?
I mean, definitely in terms of live action, at very least. Like, it's really just the role that kind of seemingly is made for him, because he plays just like that straight deadpan psychopath character so well.
Yeah, you're not a big fan of like Ivan Drago's performance then? What's the actor's name again? Fuck's sake.
What the fuck you call 125 murders in 5 years? Huh?
Work in progress.
Everyone always forgets Dolph Lundgren played the Punisher in an 80s movie that nobody remembers.
Yeah, I've seen clips of it looking around for funny Punisher clips for like videos and stuff, but I've never watched it. I didn't think Tom Jane was too bad, but he also wasn't too good either.
I think Tom Jane played the Punisher better in the Punisher video game, because they had that Punisher video game that's actually surprisingly good, and he reprised his role for that. And his voiceovers are like really, really good. Like his performance in the video game.
Bon appetit, boys.
Is better than his performance in the film, because the film is too cartoonish.
You are one dumb son of a bitch. Bring a knife to a gunfight.
Also, the bit where like Tom Jane Punisher puts like C4 under all of the cars in like John Travolta's house, and he makes the skull logo. It's like, come on,
God.
you're not Batman in like the Dark Knight Rises.
No, and it's one of those of like, you know, in terms of like the skull, for example, I get why in like the MCU they went for like the slightly less full skull than they did, where it looks more like just spray painted on with a stencil. But it's like, it falls in that middle ground of like, if they'd gone 10% further, I would have loved it.
Please don't kill me!
Bet he was a little short.
Yeah, it was just a little bit too grounded. They could have, like, elevated it just a tad. The same can be said of the Ray Stevenson version. I know a lot of people like how gritty and violent that is, but that does have some great Punisher moments, like where there's like a bunch of like Rastafarian capoeira gangsters, and he just shoots one with a rocket launcher, and it's like he gets him mid front flip.
Oh my
God! Just shoots him with a rocket launcher. But bring it back to Jon Bernthal Punisher, he took the role very, very seriously and spent a not insignificant amount of time just figuring out the kind of headspace a guy in the Punisher situation would be in, and he came to the conclusion that he would be fueled by nothing but rage, and he would fucking hate crime.
Just it's a lot of isolation and sort of not having too much fun. I think he lives in a world of darkness, so I think my job is to kind of embrace that.
That sounds terrible.
If there's many things that like the Punisher dislikes, it's probably crime.
Yeah, he hates crime like so much, you guys. And one of the things that Bernthal did is like not just the physical portrayal, because everyone agrees that his physical portrayal is really good. He looks exactly like the character does from the comic books. Like, the fight scene's awesome. We'll get to those in a moment. But he spent a lot of time just figuring out what would the psyche of a man like Frank Castle be. And he's like, well, he's got nothing left. Like, there's literally nothing left for him. He just would not care.
And it's moments where you see that in the beginning of season 2, especially, where he's like, depression beard Punisher instead, which that beard is a godly beard and he should have kept it. But other than that, like, when they're just talking to him and there's no soul left in his face at all.
Yeah, you better stay out of my way. That hammer's gonna find a new home up your ass. Do you understand?
And the only thing that rouses him from just the stupor that he's in is the potential to just kill criminals. Like, the moment, like, he gets, like, his ears prick up because he hears that crimes are happening, and he's like, it's time. Punishment.
Hey, look, it's the gift. Tonight just gets better and better.
And I think there's one more portrayal we've not given props to, because we talked about Thomas Jane, there's a live-action movie, there's the video game, but there's also the unofficial bootleg universe. Have you seen Dirty Laundry? Which is like the unofficial bootleg universe of like Marvel, where Thomas Jane reprised his role as the Punisher. And it's just a 15-minute short where it's him just doing his laundry.
No, I've never heard of this.
It's just the Punisher doing his laundry, and then, like, a crime happens outside. And the action's pretty good. Like, he beats a guy to death with a Jack Daniels bottle, which is pretty sick.
We got a motherfucking problem up in here!
But then he has this great line where he just, like, the guy's lying on the floor, his legs and arms are broken. He's like, do you know what the difference is between justice and punishment? And then he just pours Jack Daniels on him and lights a lighter and just hands it to one of his victims.
You know the difference between justice and punishment?
What?
Oh.
And just that line.
God.
Do you know the difference between justice and punishment?
Yeah, that's a great line, and I think it sums up the character so well of, like, all the different times where you see heroes try to talk to him, and he's like, I don't give a shit about justice. The reason I'm here is because justice failed.
Yeah.
I'm here to just fuck shit up.
And that's like where you have the great conversation he and Daredevil have, where Daredevil's trying to argue, look, there's another way. It's like, well, when you beat people up, they're out back on the streets in, like, 2 days because a vigilante beat them up and they can't be arrested. When I encounter a criminal, they don't commit crimes anymore, and it's really hard to argue against that because it's like, he's right, they don't commit crime anymore.
You call me the Punisher, ain't that right? The big bad Punisher. Here I am! You want to
remove the witness?
I am the Punisher!
That's the thing, isn't it? Of, like, I understand where Punisher's coming from his horrible viewpoint, and I don't agree with it, but it's hard to argue. He does stop crime.
Yeah, and there is, in the comics, there's a great arc. It's a few years ago now, where the Hand, I think, bring the Punisher's wife back. And the Punisher is talking to his wife. He's like, look at everything I've done to avenge your deaths. And his wife is horrified. And she's like, this is not what we want. Please stop. And the comics go into the fact, like, Frank Castle, like, he was born like Francis Castiglione. Like, he's Italian-American. He changed his name to Frank Castle to re-enlist in the army because he loves killing people that much.
God. And it reminds me of, it's very similar with Kingpin. Whenever he does manage to, like, reunite with Vanessa and bring her back from different multiverse or whatever it ever is, she's always just like, dear God, you're a monster. Why would you ever try to do all this to just save me?
Yeah, it's like, you're doing this for yourself. It's similar to, like, Breaking Bad, isn't it? Where, like, Bryan Cranston, Walter White's like, I'm doing this for my family. And then when he talks to his family about it, like, we don't want this, please stop. No, I'm doing it for my family. Your family doesn't want you to do it. Okay, I'm doing it for me.
It all turns out to always have been for him and his ego and his pride. Yeah.
And this is something the Punisher himself acknowledges in a couple of comic arcs. Like, there's one where it's like just after the apocalypse, like a one-shot, where he's just roaming the earth, killing the last remnants of humanity. And he always says, like, I save one bullet for myself. Because I know that once my, like, one-man, like, war on crime is done, I'll just blow my own brains out and be reunited with my wife. Or I'll go to hell and keep killing the criminals. Can you imagine that? You get killed by the Punisher, you arrive in hell, and you're like, oh, well, hell sucks a lot, but I'm not going to have, like, someone just, like, floss my balls with razor wire. Which is actually pretty great. Like, you sat there getting, like, the pitchforks in your ass. You're like, this is actually pretty relaxing compared to what the Punisher did. And then the gates of hell open and the Punisher kicks his way in. Oh, no!
What the
face! Ooh, ooh, okay, the face! Oh, that actually feels good after the crotch.
And kind of, I think a better way to view it is rather than his wife and family's death being an excuse to get back into punishing, it's more that him having a family was an excuse to take a break from it for a while.
And that's something that gets mentioned in that bootleg universe where you hear, like, when Thomas Jane's buying the Jack Daniels, he's like, you know, I've been sober for a few months now. He's not talking about drinking, he's talking about killing people.
Right.
That's his drug of choice. But anyway, bringing it back to John Bernthal Punisher, he took his physical training just as seriously as he took getting into the mind space of the Punisher. And he worked with like martial artists and choreographers to develop the Punisher's signature, painfully, brutally pragmatic fighting style. The basis of which is John Bernthal's own boxing skills. And something you'll notice if you watch the Punisher fight scenes is that the Punisher doesn't dispatch his enemies with the brutal efficiency you'd expect of a seasoned Special Forces operative. He makes them suffer, which is kind of the point. He's the Punisher.
What?
Yeah, one fight scene that I always remember quite well is the one in the gym, the weights gym, and he's just beating people to death with like giant plate weights.
Yeah, and
it's like, realistically, Punisher doesn't need to kill people that way. He can just use guns if he wanted to.
Also, you'll notice that he'll land like a clean hit with like a barbell or something, and after the person's down, he delivers the coup de grace.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as he always says, when I hit them, they stay the fuck down. And something John Bernthal was insistent upon when helping choreograph the fight scenes, that the Punisher would take advantage of the fact that he just does not care. He is fueled entirely by rage and adrenaline, and he will willingly allow himself to be hit to put himself into a more advantageous position. And something you'll notice in that gym fight scene you mentioned, Lucas, and I'll put the clip in to show what I mean here, is when he gets kicked, he'll use the momentum from the kick to put some more force into a punch on somebody else. Or he'll take a hit so the person drops their guard. So he can deliver an even more painful hit to them that puts them down instantly.
Yeah, for sure. And shout out to just the entire team that work on those fights, because the fight scenes in both Punisher and Daredevil on those Netflix shows were just fantastic.
And I remember reading an interview with the people who choreographed those fight scenes where they were speaking about what their goal was, and they said, well, our goal is to showcase what somebody who has the skills of the Punisher, who doesn't have to worry about the rules of engagement, would be able to do to an average untrained person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an average untrained person who the Punisher wants to suffer.
Yeah, usually they're just guys with guns for hire or something like that. It's not necessarily trained martial artists that he's usually taking down. Yeah, and it reminds me a little bit of Kingsman, where for the fight scene during the church, where you get Colin Firth absolutely kicking the fuck out of all the Westboro Baptist Church stand-ins. Yeah.
The choreographer for that was they talk about James Bond movies. They say James Bond is the greatest spy who's ever lived. He is a living weapon with a license to kill. And the best thing you see him do is hyah, hyah, or a lazy haymaker, or a kick, or he'll just shoot someone. They never really deliver on showing us what the best trained spy in the world can actually do. So for this fight scene, we want to showcase what someone with decades of training and the lethal efficiency of a fictional super spy would be able to do if they just stopped giving a fuck. And that's what that fight scene's supposed to showcase. Someone with these skills who's not trying to safeguard human life. They're trying to dispatch as many people as possible as quickly as they can.
Yeah, I think like the Daniel Craig ones are the only times they've really attempted to show like how dangerous Bond could actually be, like in Skyfall, where he just like is fighting to defend his home.
Yeah, and he's just putting
his like family house.
He's putting like landmines under the floor and stuff like that.
Yeah, just making traps out of everything he can fucking find.
And it's like, what would it be like to try and break into the house of a paranoid super spy? Oh, just everybody dies.
Yeah.
Welcome to Scotland.
And speaking of putting someone down in the most brutal manner possible, let's talk about the fight scene at the end of Punisher Season 1, where he confronts Billy Russo, played by one Ben Barnes. And do you remember what the Punisher does to Billy Russo? And for context here, Billy Russo is partially responsible for the Punisher's family being killed.
And he's just generally set up as a horrible,
He's a bit of a
person.
prick as well, yeah.
Yeah, and just it's burned into my memory watching him like scrape his face down a broken mirror.
But before that, Lucas, he just beats the ever-loving fuck out of him. And one of the things about the fight scene that is like so satisfying is that you see Russo just have his confidence sapped away when he thinks, I might be able to beat the Punisher a little bit. And then just as he like, oh, I'm not going to beat the Punisher. Oh no. Oh no. What's he doing with that mirror? No.
A lot of the time people joke because in Season 2, Russo's character is like so ashamed of the scars on his face, and it's like he takes the mask off and he doesn't look that bad, but I can imagine the psychological damage that fight would do to you as a person.
Yes, it is really funny though, like you say. Like, we'll put the clip in. This is what happens to Billy Russo. This is what he looks like in Season 2.
What? This is some Edward Scissorhands shit right here.
The makeup could have been better, and I just said, it's more psychological damage, and that's something they explore in the second season. It's just the fact that like they're acting like the very handsome actor Ben Barnes is this horrific monster when he's just got like 3 scars here.
Yeah, I think he literally keeps referring to himself as like this monster under the veil, and it's like he takes the mask off eventually. It's like, oh.
It's like a bit of plastic surgery to sort that right out, mate. What, you not got any money from your mercenary days?
Like, you're still one of the most handsome people on this screen right now.
But, like, when they were choreographing that fight scene, there was a very real fear that they couldn't realise the shot of the Punisher just dragging Russo's face down that broken mirror. Because how are you going to do that without hurting the actor? Because even dragging somebody's face down just a mirror that's not broken could really hurt if you did it roughly. Like, imagine like having your face like scraped against glass like that. Like, oh.
Like the spirit. It burns, it burns, it burns, it burns.
And even, if you're using potentially like some kind of stunt glass, like sugar glass or something, that could still potentially like really damage a person if you were pressing and scraping it across their face.
You could also, get it into your eye or something like that. And it's worth noting that when they were filming that fight scene, Bernthal got really into it and he accidentally punched Ben Barnes no less than 3 times. And Ben Barnes talked about how scary it is. Like, he'd be talking to John, like he'd be having a coffee, talking about the thing, then he'd go into like Punisher mode and he'd drop his face and just run at him and he'd shit himself. Because as you would, right?
Yeah.
And they eventually came up with a solution in the form of a mask that they put across the half of Barnes' face that was going to be scraped down the glass. And then 3 stunt mirrors. So they could do 3 takes, and that was it.
Right, okay.
And they told Barnes, if it starts to hurt, scream and shout stop. The problem is that the scene called for him to scream and beg for the pain to stop. You can probably see where this is going, right?
Yeah, this is why you're meant to have safety words that are like, you know, wouldn't be used within the context of what you're doing.
But the problem is like, would he be able to even think of the safety word if he was in that much pain? And the story goes that on the first take that they did, like, Ben Barnes let out such a horrifying, blood-curdling scream. The one you see in the take that made it onto the show. And just a director from off-screen, cut. And, like, Ben's like, is everything okay? What's wrong? It's like, are you okay? He's like, yeah. And everybody was looking at him. Like, are you sure you're okay? He's like, yeah. Did something go wrong? It's like, we thought you were dying. And while Barnes was just stood there dumbfounded, Bernthal walked over and said, and I quote, "How you thought I was supposed to know the difference between that scream and the scream of actual horror and death."
Shit hell.
What? Like, you know, fair play to that guy for pulling off a performance so convincing everybody actually thought his face was being ripped off.
That's the thing, right? Is like, it's everybody's responsibility on set the moment they think he's dying to immediately cut, but damn.
And it gives us, Lucas, an opportunity to talk about one of my favourite things in media, and that is scream acting. But before we talk about scream acting, why are we talking about The Punisher specifically? Because myself and you have another project, yes, on which The Punisher has been mentioned.
We have an old, new, old project, because it's hard to know how to distinguish it between... It was originally on the Fiend channel.
No, it was originally on a podcast, Lucas, that's no longer
That's
around.
true.
And then it was on the Fiend channel. Then it was its own channel called Wiki Weekends. And now Wiki Weekends also has a podcast, so it's all very circular, very meta. But me and you have a separate channel called Wiki Weekends. This video exists as a vehicle to promote that channel. Go click on subscribe to that channel. There's a Punisher episode you can go watch right now.
And that's the weird thing, is because we transitioned from doing Wiki Weekends in one format with just you on camera on the green screen and stuff on Fiend, like a Fiend video, and then we transitioned it over to a new channel where we, you know, changed up the format a little bit, but it's ostensibly the same but a bit longer. And it's really hard to remember whether we did a Punisher video on the Fiend for Wiki Weekends on the Wiki Weekends channel.
I think we did, but you know what? There's a lot to talk about when it comes to the disciplinarian. So if you are a fan of, like, you know, the Fiend format and mine and Lucas's dynamic, you can see, I think, in excess of 100 episodes of Wiki Weekends exist right now, yes?
That sounds right. We do 2 episodes every weekend, 1 episode each, and then we also have a podcast in the middle of the week where we both bring a topic to the table, and we've been going for just over a year now, so that would imply that there's, like 150 videos to go watch.
Yes, and in that year, I think we've done quite well for, like, you know, an idea we thought was kind of fun. It's like, what, 25,000 subs now? And I think when we get to 50,000, I've got to buy you, like, a giant Slowpoke plush or something, right? Didn't I make that bet when I was drunk, like, a year ago?
That's the thing, is, like, I just a few months back tweeted out, like, oh my god, they've got a life-size plush of Psyduck, and then you're like, oh yeah, you know what, if we get to 50k, I'll buy that for you. I didn't prompt this.
Yeah, so you know what, go subscribe to the Wiki Weekends channel, and if we get to 50,000, just expect to see a giant Psyduck plush in the background of Lucas's videos, and just nothing in the background of mine, because I've had to clear up my bank account to buy said giant Psyduck plush. But, you know, Lucas, to end on, do you have any favourite examples of, similar to Ben Barnes, just scream acting?
When you were talking about scream acting, for me, the first thing that came to my brain was just anime screams.
Of course, yes, and I think every time I mention scream acting, anime gets mentioned. So, Lucas, any favourite anime scream acting moments?
I mean, like, as much as I want to say the classic Dragon Ball Z answer, where they scream for like 20 minutes for filler, I just think I have to give a shout out to, like, multiple characters in Attack on Titan, which I know you've been watching, of like the scream acting when they're just like throwing their bodies into annihilation is like, holy crap. And I think you will have seen it at this point, but the I think both in dub and sub, to be fair, it's great performances from the actors, where the commander is basically telling everyone to attack the Beast Titan on horseback.
The suicide mission.
My soldiers push forward! My soldiers scream out! My soldiers rage!
Yeah, and it's like, that might be one of, like, the hardest things I've ever heard. Like, just...
Because they managed to mix so many emotions in it, and that's why I think scream acting is something that deserves to be highlighted, because it sounds like, well, just yell real loud, right? But there's different kinds of screams. There's screams of terror. There's screams of anger.
I will not let you destroy my world!
There's screams of anguish.
You can't keep getting away with it!
There's multiple combinations of emotions that can be portrayed in a scream, and it's very difficult to convincingly. It's like crying, right? Like they give like actresses like awards every year for just like not wearing makeup and crying in a movie.
Oh, this has been such an incredible year. I can't believe this.
You don't get Oscars for screaming real loud and real angrily, but it's just as difficult a performance. It's just as raw and visceral an emotion you have to channel within yourself.
Yeah, it's very hard to like make a scream that doesn't just sound like you're pretending to scream, right?
Yeah. Again, to convincingly portray the emotion that you're asked to portray, like we mentioned, The Punisher, John Bernthal has a great rage scream.
Yeah.
Like just that one of just pure guttural, bestial anger. Like this primal just energy within himself when he's just so fucking pissed, and he's using it basically as like super armor.
I'll dance with you.
And I think it's at the end of season 2 where there's like that commanding officer who's just like beating him in the chair, and then that person just gives him the injection of adrenaline.
Oh god.
And he just gets like the adrenaline scream, and he just stands up and like breaks the chair and just like in just absolute just animalistic rage just beats the living fuck out of that guy.
Yeah, nobody should ever give Frank Castle adrenaline.
You've just made him so much more effective. It's like you've just given him so much super armor. He's going to get you. But yeah, well, if anyone else has any favourite examples of scream acting, let us know in the comments. We'll be back again next week. I'm not sure how often these videos will be uploaded, but Fact Fiend's back in this limited format until I get bored again. Cheers, everybody. See you all next time.
Yeah.